June 5, 1942. Japanese intelligence officers confronted a shocking intercept. American codebreakers had anticipated the strike, reading the Unbreakable JN-25 naval system and exposing AF, the target. AF is short of water, a Japanese message confirmed days earlier, after a US ruse forced the enemy to repeat Midway's cover code in traffic. By then, the trap was set. JN-25, a 5-digit code super-enciphered with additives and built on tens of thousands of groups, was designed to defeat patterning. Yet US cryptanalysts, many of them women, had reconstructed enough of its skeleton to warn Admiral Nimitz. Between June 4th to 7th, US dive bombers found the Kido Butai and, in minutes, fatally struck Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu. Hiryu's counterblows crippled Yorktown before she and destroyer Hammond were lost. The human cost underscored the upset. Roughly 3,000 Japanese killed, 4 fleet carriers destroyed, versus about 300 Americans killed, and 1 carrier and 1 destroyer sunk. According to declassified cryptologic histories, Station HYPO's water shortage ruse clinched AF as Midway and unlocked the timing and axis of attack. NSA and museum records detail how women cryptanalysts in Washington and Pearl Harbor sifted intercepts, stripped additives, and built code books by hand, leveraging IBM tabulators only as assistants. Maps, tickers, and duty logs aligned like gears in a machine, as watch sections refined recoveries on around-the-clock shifts. The enemy had assumed mathematics and secrecy rendered their signals secure. The record shows persistence, method, and overlooked talent proved otherwise. So the question that rattled Tokyo: how did Americans, including women the IJN never imagined at the heart of naval intelligence, crack JN-25 fast enough to spring Midway's ambush? Demands an answer drawn from logs, after-action reports, and cryptologic files. To understand this reversal, we trace the enemy's confidence, the underdog reality, and the declassified strategy that turned brittle code assumptions into a decisive battlefield advantage. Japan's naval command believed its cryptographic defenses were ironclad. Their central fleet communications ran on JN-25, a super-enciphered system combining a 27500-entry codebook with a 300-page additive key book. Because the additive keys were reused, not a true one-time pad, the system had subtle vulnerabilities, but Japanese doctrine assumed those would remain inscrutable. The IJN regularly rotated addendum books, often every few months. When they introduced JN-25B on December 1, 1940, and again changed additive books just before Pearl Harbor, August and December 1941, they believed those resets would reset American progress entirely. Yet US cryptanalysts still managed to claw into portions of the system. Japanese intelligence also enjoyed successes in other cryptologic domains and had a mystique of infallibility. The Navy assumed that only large, resourced states, like Britain, could break codes, and they never suspected that hidden analysts, especially women, even in Washington or Hawaii, could break what they deemed impregnable. Their internal assessments stressed radio silence, strict procedures, and limited signal traffic to prevent detection. Fleet intelligence doctrine emphasized reliance on intercepts only for tactical updates, not strategic exposure. Japanese forces increased the use of low-power transmission, frequency hopping, and procedural discipline, all aimed at preventing signal leak. In addition, the Japanese Navy placed great trust in operational secrecy. Commanders believed that an enemy would never expect women, or even non-combatants, to be inside cryptanalysis labs. That hubris blinded them to possibilities outside their tradition. They surveilled Allied radio patterns confidently, misattributing the Allied capacity to mere traffic analysis rather than full message reading. They discounted any signs of systematic decryption, assuming anomalies reflected random noise or operator error. Through this doctrine, Japan cultivated an aura of invulnerability. But while Japanese naval confidence was firm, they underestimated how cryptanalysis ingenuity, persistent traffic collection, and unlooked-for analysts would unravel their unbreakable system. Transitioning from this myth of security, the Americans, often dismissed and underestimated, quietly assembled a capability to challenge it. In 1941, American cryptanalysis was fragmented, undermanned, and, by global standards, under-equipped. Fewer than 700 analysts served the entire U.S. Navy's communications intelligence COMINT system, scattered across Washington's Navy Annex, Pearl Harbor's Station HYPO, and smaller listening posts from Corregidor to Bainbridge Island. The Army's Signals Intelligence Service under William Friedman had fewer than 200 trained cryptanalysts, working with mechanical tabulators and pencil and paper arithmetic. Japan fielded a far more centralized naval intelligence structure, boasting a disciplined intercept network across its Pacific holdings. On paper, the Americans lagged behind. American decrypt efforts faced enormous obstacles. Each Japanese 5-digit group required a separate solution chain, and by December 1941, fewer than 3,000 of the JN-25 groups, barely 10%, had been identified. As historian W.J. Holmes documented in Double-Edged Secrets, the JN-25B upgrade of December 1, 1941, nullified months of work, forcing teams to start anew just days before Pearl Harbor. Early decrypts yielded trivial logistics chatter. Most of the system remained opaque. Even senior officers doubted whether full breaks were possible. Publicly, almost no one imagined women would soon play a decisive role. Yet the Navy began recruiting college-educated women under classified WAVES programs in 1942. Mathematics professors, crossword champions, and language scholars were quietly tested at colleges from Barnard to Wellesley. Those who passed found themselves in locked rooms at the Naval Communications Annex, reconstructing additive patterns and matching depth pairs by hand. Many never told families what they did, and their records remained sealed for decades. Material shortages added to the struggle. Paper logs filled vaults faster than they could be indexed. Tabulating machines overheated under continuous runs. As the Japanese rotated additives, American sections often lost months of progress overnight. Yet perseverance, organized into 24-hour shifts, began producing results by mid-1942. According to declassified Navy records, the breakthrough wasn't a single eureka moment, but an accumulation of small, stubborn victories by hundreds of unseen hands. The underdog cryptanalytic community had found its rhythm, combining intellect, pattern sense, and collaboration. What they lacked in resources, they replaced with endurance, a characteristic soon to shock Japanese intelligence that had underestimated them completely. Declassified naval histories show that by early 1942, U.S. codebreakers were quietly re-engineering the art of cryptanalysis. At Station HYPO in Pearl Harbor, Commander Joseph J. Rochefort and his chief linguist, Lieutenant CMDR Thomas Dyer, built a decentralized network linking intercept stations from Midway to Dutch Harbor. Their innovation lay not in vast machines, but in disciplined pattern recovery, what Rochefort called brute logic. According to the National Security Agency's West Wind Clear, HYPO's analysts manually sorted hundreds of thousands of intercepts, logging frequency counts, subtracting additives, and indexing fragments until coherent phrase chains emerged. In Washington, the Naval Communications Annex mirrored this effort on IBM punch card systems, cross-referencing suspected code groups. Into this expanding cryptologic factory stepped thousands of women. Recruited through college examinations, they entered the Navy's Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service, WAVES. In rooms labeled No Admittance Classified, they performed additive stripping, crib searches, and duplication analysis. Their precision, born from language, logic, and patience, was extraordinary. Historian Liza Mundy, citing official naval training syllabi, records that WWII's codebreakers could process twice as many intercepts per hour as untrained recruits. Among them, Ankara Christie pioneered tabulating machine runs correlating repeated additives, depths, to expose JN-25's mathematical skeleton. By spring 1942, the combined innovation paid dividends. The AF is short of water message, born of Rochefort's deceptive ruse, was recognized because analysts had reconstructed enough JN-25 groups to identify AF as Midway. That breakthrough validated the system. The methodology blended field ingenuity with industrial-scale computation, IBM punch cards, optical sorters, and statistical depth detection. Every output was verified by hand. Errors meant lives. Parallel innovations extended beyond mathematics. The Navy's Intelligence Division established Fleet Radio Units Melbourne, Frumel, and Washington, NAGAT, to share workload through secure circuits, an embryonic global intelligence cloud. Cross-Pacific message queues, maintained by women operators, linked HYPO's results directly to Admiral Nimitz's command. This architecture ensured decoded intelligence reached decision-makers faster than Japanese command chains could act. The strategy's brilliance lay in its invisibility. While the enemy believed Allied victories derived from luck or reconnaissance, U.S. records reveal methodical exploitation of cryptologic science and human endurance. Classified after-action reports credit persistent analytical labor rather than divine fortune. In truth, American innovation, powered by a workforce Japan refused to imagine, transformed paper intercepts into tactical prophecy. When Nimitz ordered his carriers toward Midway, the path had already been plotted by unseen cryptanalysts who had quietly rewritten the balance of naval warfare. By late May 1942, American and Japanese forces were maneuvering toward a collision neither side fully grasped. Declassified Pacific Fleet intelligence summaries show Admiral Chester W. Nimitz had already received Rochefort's decrypted forecasts. The enemy would strike AF, Midway, around June 4th, with 4 carriers, 2 battleships, and a full invasion convoy. Using this intelligence, Nimitz redeployed Task Forces 16 and 17, centered on Enterprise, Hornet, and the hastily repaired Yorktown, to ambush the Japanese near the atoll. Official Navy operations logs confirm Yorktown departed Pearl Harbor on May 30th. Patched in 72 hours by shipyard crews working around the clock under floodlights, Japanese records, later recovered from the combined fleet archives, show that Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's plan, Operation MI, assumed total surprise. His flagship Yamato steamed east behind a decoy northern attack force bound for the Aleutians, hoping to divert American carriers northward. The plan's flaw lay in its overconfidence. Japan relied on JN-25 security to conceal timing, never realizing HYPO's analysts had already reconstructed the date, strength, and objective. Meteorological logs and war diaries reveal worsening weather along the projected routes, grounding Japanese scout planes and limiting their visibility. Meanwhile, American PBY Catalinas extended patrol arcs from Midway, guided by decrypted bearings. Their dawn report, 2 carriers sighted bearing 320, distance 180 miles, confirmed Rochefort's analysis exactly. In Washington, women cryptanalysts at the Naval Communications Annex maintained intercept continuity, processing thousands of signals nightly to ensure HYPO's situational picture stayed current. Intercept logs showed timestamps cross-checked to the minute against Pacific intercept stations, allowing near real-time tracking of Japanese fleet radio discipline. The coordination was unprecedented. Naval cryptanalysis, reconnaissance, and operations fused into a single synchronized web. Japanese intelligence, by contrast, failed to detect any anomaly. Their traffic analysts noted no unusual American radio silence and concluded enemy carriers remained near Pearl Harbor. Internal IJN communications captured later described no evidence of American fleet movement. The stage was thus set, an invisible chessboard arranged through mathematics and deception. On the eve of battle, American codebreakers had positioned not just ships, but destiny itself. At 0430 hours, June 4th, 1942, Midway's radar screens flickered to life, recording the approach of Japan's vaunted Kido Butai. The trap was about to close. At 0430 hours on June 4th, 1942, Midway's radar operators picked up multiple inbound contacts at 150 miles. According to the U.S. Navy's action reports and Admiral Nimitz's dispatch log, Japanese carrier planes, 108 bombers escorted by 36 fighters, had launched from Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. Within minutes, American interceptors scrambled from Eastern Island, while anti-aircraft batteries manned every gun. Midway's gunners later recorded the sky as a sheet of flame. At 0710, Japanese strike leader Lieutenant CMDR Tomonaga Joichi reported the island's installations still operational, urging a second strike. That decision proved fatal. To rearm his planes, Admiral Chuichi Nagumo ordered his hangar decks cleared and refitted with bombs and torpedoes. Declassified Akagi logs confirm that at 0728, flight crews began swapping ordnance, torpedoes for armor-piercing bombs, when chaos erupted overhead. U.S. torpedo squadrons, arriving piecemeal, suffered horrendous losses. Torpedo 8 from Hornet, led by Lieutenant CMDR John Waldron, pressed its attack without fighter cover. Of 15 devastators launched, none returned. Their sacrifice pulled Japanese fighters to sea level, thinning air defense above the fleet. It was at that moment, 10:20 hours, that dive bombers from Enterprise and Yorktown, guided by Lieutenant CMDR Clarence McCluskey, sighted the carriers turning into the wind. "We caught them with their pants down," McCluskey later recalled in his official report. Within 5 minutes, the tide of the Pacific War reversed. Bombs from Enterprise's VB-6 and Yorktown's VB-3 struck Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu in rapid succession. Eyewitness Ensign Gay, sole survivor of Torpedo 8, watched from the sea as 3 Japanese carriers burned like torches. Fires raged through hangar decks laden with fuel and munitions. Official Japanese loss reports estimated casualties aboard each carrier exceeding 700 men. By 1300, only Hiryu remained operational. Her counterstrike mortally wounded Yorktown, which was later finished by the submarine I-168 2 days later, taking 141 Americans with her. In return, U.S. pilots from Enterprise and Hornet located Hiryu at 1703 and delivered 4 direct hits. She burned through the night before scuttling at dawn. By the battle's end, 4 of Japan's 6 frontline fleet carriers were gone, along with 248 aircraft and over 3,000 sailors and airmen, the elite of the Kido Butai. American losses totaled 1 carrier, 1 destroyer, and 307 personnel. As documented in the Battle of Midway After Action Reports U.S. Pacific Fleet 1942, the victory was neither chance nor luck. It was the direct result of intelligence mastery. Japanese commanders, stunned by the precision of the ambush, transmitted the final incredulous message later found in captured files. How could they know? The answer lay not in fate but in numbers, patience, and the hidden workforce that had quietly rewritten the course of naval history from behind sealed doors. When the smoke cleared on June 5, 1942, the Imperial Japanese Navy's command chain fractured under disbelief. Declassified translations of captured communications, now held in the U.S. National Archives, record Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's stunned reaction. "The Empire has sustained a grave blow. How could the enemy have known our moves?" In one intercepted signal from Combined Fleet Headquarters to the surviving cruiser Nagara, Japanese staff demanded confirmation that 4 carriers were indeed lost, suspecting a transmission error. There was none. Fleet survivors reported chaos aboard the burning decks. The official war diary of Akagi, retrieved from Japanese archives after 1945, described fires leaping through hangar levels, aircraft exploding every few seconds. Many men trapped below decks perished instantly. Admiral Nagumo's post-war interrogation, recorded by U.S. Navy historians in 1946, revealed his continued astonishment. He had believed JN-25 communications fully secure, beyond compromise. By contrast, American cryptanalytic intercepts showed Japanese naval morale collapsing within hours. Direction-finding units at Midway and Pearl Harbor logged frantic emergency transmissions, breaking radio silence protocols that had once defined IJN discipline. Japanese officers used open call signs, a breach unimaginable before Midway, confirming total disarray. According to a declassified Fleet Radio Unit Melbourne (FRUMEL) report, one Japanese signal officer remarked privately, "It was as if our enemies saw through the waves themselves." Intelligence post-mortems within the Japanese Navy attempted to rationalize the loss, weather, bad luck, or reconnaissance failure, but avoided the unthinkable, that their secret code had been read. Documents captured after Japan's surrender show the Naval General Staff did not suspect a full cryptologic compromise until late 1943, more than a year after Midway. For Japan, Midway was more than a tactical disaster. It was a spiritual shock. 4 elite carrier air groups, the same that struck Pearl Harbor, were annihilated, their veterans irreplaceable. The aura of invincibility surrounding the Kido Butai evaporated overnight. Internal morale reports recorded a sudden heaviness in every heart. As Japan mourned its fallen flagships, American analysts quietly resumed decoding the same frequencies, now unguarded and panicked. The Empire's code shield had cracked, and its commanders still refused to believe it. The victory at Midway reshaped the Pacific balance of power overnight. According to U.S. Pacific Fleet Intelligence Bulletin No. 18, June 15, 1942, Japan's carrier arm had been so gravely depleted as to remove its offensive capacity for the foreseeable future. Admiral Nimitz telegraphed Washington that the threat to Hawaii and the West Coast is effectively ended. Declassified memoranda from the Joint Chiefs reveal that for the first time since Pearl Harbor, U.S. planners discussed a sustained counteroffensive, what would soon become the Guadalcanal campaign. Allied morale surged. British naval observers at Bletchley Park described Midway as the turning of the tide, while Australian communications officers credited the American Cryptologic Network for proving that mathematics can sink ships. U.S. newspapers, restricted by censorship, called it a decisive naval victory, omitting mention of intelligence breakthroughs. The full role of code-breaking remained hidden, classified under the ultra-level secrecy that persisted for decades. Japanese headquarters, meanwhile, confronted logistical collapse. Internal intelligence assessments recovered from Tokyo in 1945 show the Navy admitting the loss of 248 aircraft and over 100 of its most experienced pilots. The Combined Fleets After-Action Report, translated by Allied analysts, lamented, "Our offensive arm has been broken. Rebuilding will take years. Replacement carriers, Taiho, Shinano and others would not arrive until late 1944, too late to reverse momentum." Within U.S. intelligence circles, Midway validated the fusion of cryptology and operations. Declassified Office of Naval Intelligence memoranda highlight the establishment of permanent coordination centers linking HYPO, FRUMEL, and NEGAT to operational commands. In Washington, hundreds of newly trained Waves analysts, many of them the same women who had cut their teeth on JN-25, were reassigned to monitor new Japanese cipher variants. Their reports now fed directly to Pacific Fleet headquarters in near real time. Strategically, Midway marked the beginning of Japan's long retreat. The Empire's defensive perimeter would shrink steadily, its carriers replaced by inexperience and desperation. American intelligence, once the underdog, had become the decisive weapon. From this moment forward, every Japanese move was shadowed by an unseen adversary, an army of analysts whose greatest victory would remain a secret until history finally declassified their triumph. Historians universally recognize Midway as a fulcrum in World War II. Yet beyond ships and bombs, its true revolution unfolded in silence, inside code rooms illuminated by flickering lamps. The official U.S. Navy Combat Intelligence Division Report, 1943, described the victory as the first battle won through information mastery rather than numerical strength. This was not hyperbole. Midway proved that cryptology, once an academic curiosity, had become a strategic weapon. Declassified NSA historical studies credit the integration of HYPO's field decrypts with Washington's analytical depth as the model for all subsequent U.S. signals intelligence architecture, including Cold War-era systems like NSA's SIGINT command network. Operational doctrine changed accordingly. The Navy instituted continuous intelligence operations fusion centers, ensuring that no major fleet movement would occur without cryptanalytic coordination. The intelligence cycle concept, collection, analysis, dissemination, was first institutionalized in 1942, following Midway's example. Modern Joint Intelligence Operations Centers trace their lineage directly to Rochefort's team and its coordination with Admiral Nimitz's command. Academically, Midway reshaped the perception of intelligence work itself. Universities such as Harvard and Columbia later cited the cryptanalytic breakthroughs as proof that theoretical mathematics, linguistics, and logic had decisive military value. Wartime collaboration between academia and the Navy's communication intelligence units evolved into post-war programs that birthed modern computer science and information theory. Historian David Kahn, in the Codebreakers, notes that the discipline of code-breaking became the discipline of computing. Equally transformative was the recognition, long delayed, of women's contribution. The U.S. Navy's 1982 commemorative study, Women Cryptanalysts in World War II, formally acknowledged that over 10,000 women served in cryptology, many directly contributing to the JN-25 breakthroughs. Figures like Anne Cara Christie, Agnes Meyer Driscoll, and Genevieve Grotjan-Feinstein redefined who could shape wartime intelligence. Their precision and endurance disproved the cultural assumptions that had blinded Japanese intelligence to their existence. The term "code girls," popularized decades later, became shorthand for an invisible revolution that rewrote military and social boundaries alike. Midway's legacy thus transcends its immediate victory. It established the information battlefield, where foresight outweighs firepower, and cemented intelligence as the foundation of national defense. The unseen analysts of 1942 demonstrated that patience, intellect, and innovation could collapse empires. As modern naval strategy and cybersecurity doctrine attest, the lessons of Midway remain current. Technology may evolve, but the quiet war of signals endures. And within that lineage, the voices of those women, once classified, continue to resonate through every encrypted channel of the modern world. The Battle of Midway endures not only as a military triumph, but as a testament to intellect, innovation, and courage unseen by history's spotlight. According to declassified U.S. Navy combat assessments, 1942, Japan's offensive capacity was irreparably diminished after Midway. But behind that official phrasing lies the human element. Thousands of American codebreakers, many of them women, who transformed numbers into foresight. Their pencils, typewriters, and IBM cards became instruments of strategy as potent as any torpedo. Every statistic tells a story verified in record. 4 Japanese fleet carriers lost. Over 3,000 sailors killed. 1 American carrier sacrificed. 307 Americans fallen. Yet each figure also marks the triumph of clarity over chaos. Where Japan placed its faith in secrecy, America placed its faith in people, trained, determined, and willing to confront the impossible. Declassified archives from the National Security Agency confirm that lessons from JN-25 guided the birth of post-war SIGINT systems. Today's intelligence analysts, operating satellites and algorithms, follow a lineage that began in those cramped rooms in Pearl Harbor and Washington. The principle remains unchanged. Knowledge, verified and applied with discipline, decides wars long before guns fire. The moral echo of Midway also lies in recognition. For decades, the women whose meticulous work shaped victory remained silent under oath of secrecy. Only with the publication of Code Girls and NSA's official commemorations did their role finally reach public awareness. Their patience and precision remind us that patriotism is not only valor in combat, but perseverance in obscurity. Midway teaches that brilliance often hides behind ordinary faces. Intelligence, integrity, and cooperation, not brute force, preserve nations. As the U.S. Naval Academy's historical curriculum now emphasizes, the battle's enduring lesson is simple: information is power only when guided by purpose. Military history proves it. Never underestimate American determination, ingenuity, and the quiet minds that defend freedom from behind the veil of code.